Hi, I'm Gary Ford from Tiger Hobbies Limited. Welcome to this short video, which is in addition to our latest ACES series about Hans-Joachim Marseille. In this part, it's to find out why he managed to rack up so many victories over aircraft of the Desert Air Force, and maybe dispel the legend that the Special Air Service destroyed more aircraft on the ground than the Royal Air Force did in the air. The Desert Air Force, which was majority Royal Air Force, was supported by squadrons from the South African Air Force, the Royal Australian Air Force, and later units from the United States Army Air Force, plus pilots from Canada, New Zealand, and Free French and others. The DAF never really lost overall air superiority over the battlefields of North Africa. The Luftwaffe may have held local superiority, but never forced the DAF totally from the skies. I've also included some different models on this particular one, and for the detectives of Monte, you'll notice a pink Land Rover SES Land Rover Pink Panther from the 1970s, and I'll cover that slightly later in the video. Also on the turntable, I've replaced the BF-109 of Marseille with Oblimaster HA9205. It's a Curtiss P40 Tomahawk in Royal Air Force and Commonwealth Service, this time flown by Neville Duke. This particular model is unfortunately sold out, but we have got stock of HA9206, which is the same aircraft but flown by Australian ace Clive Caldwell, known as Clive Killer Caldwell, the top scoring Australian ace of World War II, and the top scoring P40 pilot of any air force, with over 22 kills on the P40. In one dogfight with pilots of 1st Staff of JG-27 Marseille Squadron, a number of BF-109 Trops, it bounced Caldwell's P40, wounding him in the back, arm, legs, and riddled his aircraft with machine gun and cannon rounds. To show how tough the P40 was and Caldwell, he turned his aircraft into the attack, shooting down one of the 109s and forcing one of their top aces, Schroer, scuttling back to his base. The Luftwaffe were aware of this aggressive Australian, gave him the nickname Tiger Caldwell. This shows for all the aces, like Marseille, the Luftwaffe were being held to account by well-trained and aggressive pilots like Caldwell, Neville Duke, Ian Widgbleed, and many others. Royal Air Force and British intelligence must have known about Marseille, the identification of unit JG-27. Marseille was treated like a superstar by the German press and media, and of course Goebbels' propaganda machine, and bragging how many he was shooting down. And no doubt the British were also reading encrypts or intel from Ultra. You would think they would have made a point of basically getting him, either bombing his airfield or sending Mr. Main and his bad lads to do him in. 158's an awful lot of British and Commonwealth aircraft, and many crews possibly lost the guns of Marseille. In late December 1941, in one of the early successful raids by the Special Air Service, Paddy Mayne led a patrol into Tamiya airfield, destroying many Axis aircraft. But in one incident, they burst into an aircrew hut, or bar, and killed maybe up to 30 Axis pilots and aircrew with machine guns. This incident made its way up to the British chain of command, and was basically condemned, not cricket, old chap, and may have marked Paddy Mayne's card, and may have resulted in not getting the VC in later operations, including many brave acts in Italy and Northwest Europe. It could be the case that after Tamiya airfield, the killing of aircrew in their bars or non-flying duty was not encouraged, and may have let Marseille and his likes off the hook, and this is probably one of the main reasons Marseille went on to score such a vast amount, as he started his reign in early 1942, and if the RAF could not shoot him down, they should have bloody well bombed him in his bed. This also leads to the legend that the SAS destroyed more aircraft on the ground than the Royal Air Force in the sky, or Desert Air Force. Even a recent BBC TV drama, SAS Rogue Heroes, which I'm a massive fan and cover a little later, during the promotions for the show they mentioned the same, but this was not the case. Do not get me wrong, what the SAS did in North Africa was incredible. It was also the case of deception. Remember, the Special Air Service came from deception, with a British intelligence officer, Dudley Clark and others, setting up a fictitious parachute brigade around the Suez Canal and calling it the Special Air Service in possibly early 1941, possibly before, sending unsecured signals about the size of the unit, and even getting soldiers to pretend they were in the unit. So when David Sterling came along with the idea of a commando force to go behind enemy lines, it was taken on board by Clark and named L Detachment Special Air Service, as Clark thought this would add to the deception. The Phantom Major and his mob, according to the Germans, were everywhere. So if you were on guard in a lonely Luftwaffe airfield, you can only imagine what was going through their minds. Oh mein Gott! Let's hope the British commandos do not sneak up on us, or we are done for. In total, the SES destroyed upwards of 400 Axis aircraft on airfields, well behind the lines, which made a difference, certainly. And it certainly affected German morale. But in the North African campaign, the Axis would lose close to 8,000 aircraft, many falling to the guns of the Desert Air Force. And by time of Second El Alamein in October 1942, or the build-up to El Alamein, the Desert Air Force had a front-line strength of over 1,500 combat aircraft on the front line. So, let's talk about some of the models that I've added. So I've mentioned the P40. So just down on the left, you'll see a couple of Jeeps. First at the bottom is the classic Tamiya North African SES Jeep that dates back from, I think, about 1972 or 73. So when people talk about the SES were not really known about before the 1980 hostage rescue situation at the Iranian embassy siege at Princess Gate, say 1980. Well, this is not the case. Obviously, anybody who's interested in history and making models certainly knew about the SES. And that's where that pink Land Rover comes into it. This was released by Tamiya in 1976. And it's a cracking little kit. And it just sells, what, $12.99? The SES Jeep, there over there, is only $9.99. It comes with the little SES driver with his Sandberry and winged Excalibur, plus GPMGs and all the kit that would use these Land Rovers in the Middle East in the 1960s and 70s. Also, above the SES Jeep on the left again is a Taglieri 135th. It's called a Commando car, but it's clearly an SES Jeep. This time from the Northwest European campaign, likely to be featured in SES Rogue Heroes Series 3. They're not talking about it, but a clue is that it's going to be about the SES in Northwest Europe. This is a cracking model. Again, you can see modifications as they learnt their lessons, extra fuel tanks in the back, twin Vickers machine guns front and back with the single Vickers, but also you'll notice the heavy protected bulletproof glass above the gun positions on the Jeep. Again, this is only around about $11.99, so it's super value. Also down on the right, below the Special Air Service Jeep, is a Mosquito FB6 fighter bomber. These are about $26.99. The reason I brought this here is to cover the reason why, after the Tamiya incident where Blair Paddy Mayne shot all those pilots and was castigated for it, things would change. So in one of my early series about the bombing offensive, I talked about agreeing about the combined Allied bomber offensive in Casablanca in early 1943. And this when things started to change. Because during that, especially 1943, literally thousands and thousands of Allied bombers, RAF and United States Army Air Force bombers were literally shot out the sky by the Germans, who simply were not having their defences interfered with by the Allies, or not on a great regular basis. It resulted also in obviously tens and tens of thousands of lost Allied bomber crews, so things had to change. And by late 1943, the gloves were off. And Serrate missions and intruder missions flown by the incredible de Havilland Mosquito FB Mark 6 fighter bomber, flown many of them by Commonwealth squadrons, 418 Royal Canadian Air Force, 464 Royal Australian Air Force, and many other Mosquito squadrons. They literally realised by then, well, you've got to kill these night fighter pilots and day fighter pilots. It doesn't matter if you kill them in the bar, kill them in the mess hall, kill them in bed, kill them on the bog. You've got to do it. Because every one of these pilots who are dead is not going to be shooting down Allied aircrew. So the gloves certainly came off by the end of 1943, from 1944 to the end of the war. So come back, Paddy Mayne, all is forgiven. So it's up to 1942, basically, the air war in the West, I'm not sure about the air war in the Far East or the air war in the Eastern Front, but the air war in the West, so the Luftwaffe would be the Royal Air Force, Luftwaffe would be the United States Army Air Force, certainly to 1943, was almost like sport, really. You know, you went shooting them down, but after that, nobody bothered you in your social life. or not very often. But after 1940 or late 43, the gloves certainly came off. So, so that's basically the extra video I decided to do about Hans-Joachim Marseille. Before I leave, though, I want to talk quickly about a link that I've left in the previous video, and I'll also link in this to two, or certainly one film, and then possibly two if I can find it on YouTube for you. So the first one I've linked will be 1957 Strum Von Afrika, The Star of Africa. Because Marseille was not tainted with the Nazis as much as other German forces personnel, the German film industry made a war film in 1957 about the life of Hans-Joachim Marseille. It's in German, but it's got subtitles. Yes, it's a film of its time with models and things. But for aviation enthusiasts, you'll notice that the Messerschmitt 109s are actually Spanish Air Force Bouchons. And I do believe this was the first time the Bouchon was used in a movie role to depict a Messerschmitt 109, some 10 to 12 years before the 1969 release of Battle of Britain. The other movie they did at the similar time was about the German Fallschirmjägers. Again, they were not really tainted much with Nazism as the other forces organisations. So this was called The Green Devil, made at a very similar time, about the German paratroopers' defence of Monte Cassino in 1944. And finally, the Special Air Service. Again, you know, Ben McIntyre's book, which is fantastic. SAS Rogue Heroes, which I'm really enjoying. Some say that the portrayal of Blair Paddy Mayne isn't totally accurate, but it's bringing the story of the SAS to a wide audience. And if Blair Paddy Mayne is to get a posthumous, well-deserved Victoria Cross, and there is a campaign for him to have this award, then it's going to be programs like SAS Rogue Heroes that will help towards it, obviously, and obviously the good work that's gone on before. But in the 1950s, a Hollywood movie in colour, starring British matinee idol Dirk Bogarde, called They Who Dare, so the clue's in the title. He plays a Special Air Service officer. They don't actually say he's in the Special Air Service, but on his hat is the winged Excalibur. And it's about a raid on the Aegean to destroy some Axis bombers on an airfield. So it's a joint SAS Special Boat Section operation. And again, I think it's free on YouTube, and if I can find it, I will leave the link. But to say the SAS wasn't known before the Princess Gate in 1980s, a load of bunkum. Anybody who's into history, or even building models by Tamiya, certainly knew about the SAS. Once again, thank you for listening to this video, and I'll see you on the next ACES series. Thank you very much.